Amok tel regulation ay LD2, right? Regulation number 3, regulation number 4, correct? LSL issue lang FIU, AML, CFT, and Momsadra, VASPs, malibang MVTS. And the purpose is try to track down financial transactions, which in parallel or out of the norm through the digital phone or other means other than through the banks or cash, I say. Is that the premise on this one? But right now, I asked the director of the tax before, I said, can they track the payments and transactions or retail malubing? And they said they couldn't. They have to wait for the lines to cross on some bank somewhere to realize the revenue. And therefore, nga niya huge delay for the tax realization or collection. Is that true? Because you don't have the banks here, they're banking outside of the jurisdiction. They're not local banks. They're somewhere in New York or other foreign country.
So the purpose of adding VASPs to this is that their obligation will be, they're here, but their obligation will be to report to us suspicious transactions as well.
Understood. So that's the intention because right now there's a time delay. If they do report or if you get informed that they did the exchange already by monetary exchange, correct?
So there's a delay, but it's within the scope of the law. We've checked with the banks, and the length of time that takes for them to notify us is within our law, legal requirements. Yeah.
Okay. So, tell the question in your defense and your attempt, trying to be objective here. So, if somebody goes buys some merchandise in a local store or buys property, but they don't exchange cash, they don't use the banks here, they'll use some sort of a mechanism like, let's say, WeChat or other. So it's transacted outside of PALAU. How does FIU, FIC, or the taxman recognize and say there was a transaction, it should be taxed? Right now, what's your capacity right now?
Our capacity is 4 people, so we don't have a lot of capacity to do that. But our plan is, and we're working more closely with.
Yes, that's the plan.
Right.
What happens if this transaction happened last week? Where is FIU, where is FIC, and where is the taxman?
So you bring up a valid point. The creation of these regulations are mainly a hel shobail maktubar al selbelaw. Like I mentioned, the Seral ask a question na Senator Nakamura, o eding aring lendia kala al stobering. So kamama this tiang amurat mokal make sure yagidil kombali license tra al selbelaw akamama regulate to the extent that we're able to.
Like existing regulations.
These are new regulations.
So therefore, like you said, you're reacting to this. Back to the question: if there were a couple of transactions last month, does the taxman or the FIU, FIC recognize, or do they get informed of those transactions? It was $1 million transaction. Are you aware of that? Are you made aware, or is the taxman made aware? What if they choose not to report? What happens?
And so this is part of the enforcement mechanisms, right? So if it was made last month, $1 million, and it was on Apple Pay, for example, we wouldn't necessarily, and it happened outside of PALAU, we wouldn't necessarily know about it. Some of the benefit of being an FIU is that we are in communication with other FIUs and we're allowed to share information. So sometimes we see other FIUs provide us with information, but these are kind of the gaps in the system, right?
So, yeah. And therefore, and then you say they're already registered, so they're allowed. And we had a situation with a stablecoin where they tried to circumvent the existing system, I say. And then it got found out that they did not go through the proper channels. You said there's no law, but contention before was based on Article 9, Section 5, Subsection 6, Constitution of the Republic of Palau. So how can you allow, if you're allowing this, aren't you breaking the law, constitutional law, if you're allowing it right now, if they're not registered? Here's the language, Constitution, right? And there's no law, there's no regulation. So Section 5 of Subsection 6, to provide for the Olvira Lulaw to provide a monetary and banking system and to create or designate the national currency.
So virtual asset service providers wouldn't necessarily be the national currency. So
it's a banking system or a financial transaction system, correct? Because if you're saying it's separate, then maybe we should all move to that and then be anonymous for a lot of our transactions.
I mean, our banking system, I think I don't have an answer for you, Senator. If I can come back to you at a later date and answer your question.
Because monetary cannot be exclusive to the US dollar. You have the yuan, peso, right? Stone money. So, but I think this language in the Constitution gives us very broad powers to control all of that, right? To regulate. So again, this is in your defense and attempting to regulate this. But I hope it shows the gap on where we're missing from point A to point B. Because I did ask the taxman, how are you going to collect the taxes on the numerous transactions on the retail side or the wholesale side or some private property matters? They said they couldn't. They had to wait for the transactions to cross paths somewhere, maybe in New York or Hong Kong, right?
I think that's the way it happens.
That's
yes.
the way it is right now, correct?
I don't think there's a fail safe. There's the best we can do.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to diminish the power of the FIC. I'm trying to have everybody realize what you're trying to do with these regulations is to comply so we can have all eyes and hands on this thing. Because if not, it's like what Senator Nakamura said about the remittance tax. Now we have to check how much remittance we received for last year. See? And then I think somebody mentioned the GCash. And then we have coupons.
Yes, you have a good point. It does have to cross the financial sector for us to be able to see it. If it doesn't cross Palau's financial sector, I won't be able to see it.
There you go.
So that's where I brought up the report that's being prepared. Is that was caught because it ran through the financial sector. So even though it's an online payment platform, it had to run through the financial sector. So when it ran through, the financial sector said, look, these people are not supposed to be doing this. So that's how we find out that person, and that's where we can reach out to the taxman and say, you're owed this much money from these people because they ran through the financial system.
Because you're trying to regulate the tokenization of property and everything. Those fall under this too, right? If you tokenize property so you can transact between the two digital residents, I mean, Palau is left out of it, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We would be
so
out of that.
I think we need to call a spade and say that should, I mean, it's a risk for Palau security. If you're going to have digital residents staying outside of Palau and transacting on tokenized properties of Palau, we're basically we've just sold out our sovereignty. And then I have a request, the chairman, instead of trying to follow the outside institutions and following on their rules, I think we should kind of concentrate on our rules and how to protect ourselves first.
Sulage Senator Rudimch aiga mring luriol ng besel tokol bot si Brasil. Wamal mlere. Ara ongelon molbi la dim lagi mdasra lagi dim le react ruli FIC act ang mlehap pena ngwal reaction rgi ko FIC law. Yalang ang Senator Boles president. Mal mlamo ut. Giredel mo makarugoy rulil mo ngilel mo aterra. Yal kukter olol ng arigim tergal besel ngal galer all time el dus pe arwa de ngal ol tekle en numur tawdo do ma business al sela bulat. Yo spe arage surgamiu bangis urobui.
I'm trying to figure out the algebra or geometric term about the trajectory and the intersection of the trajectory, and then that's where you find out. But it could be like 6 months from now or a year from now. Udle chairman na obura denis turag galer babil mata ruba krabulum. Evya makaruba ka mga ringin, di ringin mo 6 months. Yang karuba ka bolo sige abura denis kan makaiba leng mo say said $50 lamo $120. Karuba ka say ngam gumlama sa aralo sa leng kalwa biam lamo klo. Dilim na katam lo tingal armel babi mo. I think it's a point and I think that it relates to the stablecoin concerns that we had. It's major concerns against the digital residency. Because of the powers that be made some statements that I think were deliberately trying to delineate the locals from the digital residents. Actually, the chairman Udrela say, "Cabo mesa se legunda sa other teori da ayadar melayak lertit, mura gemikran. Kaya other nga outside the faceless and nameless enjoy sovereignty telbulu by tokenized properties. I think that's a disservice, a violation ra constitution of Lurvelaw. The second pointer say, "Msula chairman na." I give it 2 points, and they have a point. Hindi ko mal taga ng kalngal gawa lutong moklam mo das wala mo da mi obul taga kosa nga rogo mo. Ang sibikan mo help chairman mo mo claim but on the record you agree with what our observation on this one?